Hey, Marine Corps veteran, founder and CEO of Militello Capital and Localvest, Bill Militello. Welcome to the show today. We got some great things to talk about. Before we get to talking about business and entrepreneurship, take us back. What you did? Tell us what you did in the Marine Corps, and maybe even the Naval Academy, depending on how far back you want to go.
Joe, thanks so much for having me on the podcast. I love the name. Veterans on the move, and if veterans know how to do anything, it's like shoot, move, and communicate. And so I guess we're doing everything but shoot. Maybe we're just shooting ideas around. But
Mike.
yeah, appreciate it. Just going back to when I entered the military, I enlisted in the Navy right out of high school, and then got picked up for the Naval Academy, graduated with the class of 92, accepted a commission in the Marine Corps at basic school, made the decision to go signals intelligence, deployed with the 26 MEU to Somalia in 1994 out of Lejeune. And then after getting back from that fun in the sun, my last tour of duty was at the National Security Agency, and then transitioned out of the military from there.
Yeah, I remember when we were about ready to come ashore. I was in flight school, I believe, when they were getting ready to come ashore in Somalia. I was watching it on the news. It was dark, and there were some guys from a landing team that were down there putting in markers on the beach for the Marines to come ashore when the sun was coming up. And there were all these news reporters down there on the beach, like filming them doing this stuff. It seemed so ironic that you were about to make an actual landing, but the current environment was safe enough that there could be reporters sitting down.
That's right. I remember watching it on TV as well, because I think that was the 24th MEU, if I'm not mistaken.
Probably.
And remember a friend of ours, Lieutenant Kirk Coker. I don't know what rank he is now, but anyway, he was the one that was interviewed on the beach. It was kind of funny with trying to be stealth-like and make the landing, and all of a sudden all the camera lights pop on.
Yeah, that was hilarious. I thought that was so ironic. Anyway, so talk about what your transition was like when you got out of the Navy and went back to the civilian side of things.
Yeah, so when I left the Marine Corps in '97, after completing my 5-year commitment after graduating from the Naval Academy, I thought I had a plan. and I had interviewed in a bunch of big places, and didn't really have any offers. But I said, I'm going to try my hand at this entrepreneurial thing, and went to go work for a friend of the family. And I will tell you that my wife refers to our transition as the flaming reentry, right? So it's like, okay, these guaranteed paychecks, twice a month, and all these resources you can call up, and really the transition program back in 96, 97 was nothing to speak about. I think the one thing I remember was wear a black suit on interviews. I was like, are we interviewing to be undertakers or in business? So, I hope to God that, transition assistance has improved in the last 20 plus years. But yeah, that's what it was like. It was rough. It was filled with unemployment, filled with spending my modest savings in trying to find a career and try to get something going, and it was met with failure after failure, to be quite frank. So it was a scary couple of years after leaving active duty.
It's almost like you have to go through that pain you're almost just reorienting yourself, and sometimes it just takes a while until you get it figured out.
Yeah, I guess so. I agree with you, but from a personal perspective, I'd like to avoid pain wherever possible, right? Because you don't need to practice pain. Life gives you plenty of opportunities to put some knots on your head. So, but yeah, I will tell you that in retrospect, it was probably one of the best experiences of my life, because that transition just broke me down to like my core values, and then I started to rebuild myself from there. But it took probably 2 years of just just getting beat on, if you will, by the world,
Hmm.
and didn't enjoy going through it, but a lot of lessons learned, and it was a good place to build a foundation to launch from over the last 21 years,
Yeah.
22 years.
So after the painful transition, where did you end up landing?
Well, I bounced a bit, right? Because I was trying to figure out, what did I want to be when I grew up? And, now I'm pushing 30 and looking at entry level positions with big companies. And so, after a failed attempt at working for a friend of the family in his financial advisory business, and then with a government contractor that was building systems for FINRA, I was able to network my way into a job on Wall Street as an equity trader, and where I thought, gosh, this is exactly what I want to do for the rest of my life. This is awesome. I'm in, the mecca of capitalism as a trader, and was just really enjoying myself and moving up in the ranks. And then 9/11 happened. And so that was, more than a setback.
Yeah, no kidding. Um, so had you always had this entrepreneurial bug going way back, or did you gradually end up in it?
Yeah, so I've always wanted to be an entrepreneur. I always wanted to be a business owner. My father had a small appliance and hardware business in my hometown of Bayonne, New Jersey. His father had a sewing machine repair business. So I read somewhere, I'll have to cite the source, but and find it for you. But I've read that the that having a parent as an entrepreneur has creates the greatest likelihood that you'll become an entrepreneur or a business owner. And so, I wash the windows and dust the TVs and the refrigerators in my father's business after school every day, and help them with various things. So I kind of grew up in business, and I wanted to serve my country. Um, and I knew that the military is a young person's game. It's not something I can put off into my 40s and 50s. And so that being an entrepreneur and a business owner was going to have to wait until I served and I gave something before I received something from this country.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, as you were looking to make the jump into entrepreneurship yourself after you transition, get some stable employment, what kind of things were you seeing out there in the landscape, and how did you end up getting involved in Localvest?
Sure. So after 9/11, I was unemployed again. So it's starting to become a habit. And uh, and I got picked up as a consultant to the Securities and Exchange Commission. I thought that would be like a port in a storm and go back to New York after, the bear market was over. As it turned out, we started to have children, and uh, and I decided to hang out a shingle with my first business in January 2003. So I've started 4 companies. I've sold 2, all in financial services, and as it through that progression of owning 401k consulting businesses, a wealth management company, and Militello Capital, which is a what we call a joint venture private equity business investing in commercial real estate and startups, that we created Localvest really as an internal software project to manage all of our limited partners, our investors, our financial intermediaries, our deals, and really just to communicate information. And so uh, really, Localvest was just supposed to be an investor portal on steroids. And I didn't like any of the off the shelf things. And so in my hubris, I said, we should just build our own. It's software. How difficult could that be? well,
Yeah,
well,
right.
if you've never built software before, it's like it is very difficult. So, 6 years ago, we embarked on this project. It worked very well for us internally, not just to communicate information about private investments, because they're rather opaque, right? It's not Apple, it's not General Electric or Microsoft, where there's plenty of information and analysts that'll tell you everything you want to know about them. There's limited information about private investments, and so we wanted to overcome that for our investors and prospective investors and make it more transparent. And so we built this thing, and when we flipped the switch, the funny thing happened is it the phone started to ring, right? And people were getting this more, I'm going to call it the color commentary. You get the play-by-play is the stuff you'd expect to hear. Here's your statements, and here's your K1, and here's your valuation, et cetera, your distributions. But then it was more the color commentary about news, like if we owned an apartment building someplace and a big company moved into town, and we sent out that news clipping, digitally, of course, people would find that to be the most interesting thing, and they'd call up and say, "That's good for us, right?" And I go, "Yeah, well, it's not bad for us. Yeah, it's good for us. More demand for these apartments. We could probably raise rents," and we did, and we made money. And so that was that actually turned Localvest, the technology, into a distribution platform, which I found out later was one of the hardest things to accomplish in financial services. So people would call us and say, "Hey, you got any other deals? You got any other investments?" And where before you can call somebody a bunch of times and never get them on the hook, but when they were calling you and asking you, obviously that made for a much easier sale. And so that was the beginning of Localvest. And we were approached many times because we had some capital at Militello Capital. We had some capital. And the worst thing in the world was turning an entrepreneur down. It killed me. It killed me, especially, good entrepreneurs, veterans, have solid business plans and ideas, and all they need is gas in the tank, right, Joe? So all they need is the capital. And, we had finite capital. And so I was like, well, how do I, make my network, my Rolodex of hundreds of wealthy investors and others, how do I make that available to these veterans? And because just picking up the phone and making email introductions was just, that's a job in itself. And so we kind of had our my co-founder, John Bracken, who's a really smart guy, Berkeley MBA, who's the co-founder of evite.com and was on the AIM team, AOL Instant Messenger team, built that back in the day. So really bright bulb, right? And he looks at me across the table one day about 3 years ago and says, how many more Militello capitals are out there? And I was like, "Gee, John, I don't know, tens of thousands." And he goes, do they have the same problem you have? I go, "I would imagine they do." And he goes, "Well, it would take a rewrite of the software, but we could basically turn this from an investor portal to a marketplace. And you'd be able to just make your network available to these entrepreneurs who want to come in and list their deals, list their offerings." And I said, "You know what? Let's do it." And that's Localvest.
That's awesome. All right. That's a great stopping point. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back. All right. Back talking with Marine Corps veteran, founder and CEO of Militello Capital and Localvest, Bill Militello. So, Bill, I was kind of getting a few more details from you on the break. And so you guys, I wanted to go back a little bit. When you guys were developing your own software, basically to distribute information to your current investors, and in the process of doing that, you discovered that as you were feeding your current investors really good information on some of the projects and real estate that they were invested in, they started calling you.
Yeah, that's right.
Being more interested. And you said, typically in the world of selling somebody an investment, you're constantly trying to call them and trying to get them on the phone. It's hard to do. All of a sudden you saw something, you discovered something kind of by accident that made your phone start ringing. And
yes, it was the oddest thing in the world. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Joe.
But this is, I'm going to stress this point because this is very, very important in the world of entrepreneurship. Is sometimes you think you're going this way, and along the way you discover where there's demand for something, and you pivot and run with that. And that's kind of what happened in this case. You developed a software system to distribute information to your own investors. They start calling you. People that weren't even already investors with you started calling you based off of this information flow that you developed. And then you said your business partner, really smart guy, says, how many other companies like ours is there? And the reason he asked that is, we could market this software system to other companies like ours, develop an entire platform of investment companies that are investing in real estate. And you take it even a little bit further and you say, we're going to focus on the underserved communities like the veterans, minority and women owned business projects. And you guys are in the beginning stages of this, but you've definitely discovered something, and you're on to something, and that's what you're doing, which is really cool. Now, the top two of the top three things that veterans struggle with when they get out and go into entrepreneurship. One is access to capital, and the number two is lack of a network to plug into. Your platform really solves both of those struggles. It does open up access to capital, gets them exposure, which is also helping to plug into that network that exists of investors that are looking for good investments. And you said yourself, the thing you hated most was turning down an entrepreneur. And the only reason you had to turn them down was you didn't have enough capital to give. But if you have a network of other people that are willing to do that, now you're not having to turn down as many entrepreneurs.
That's right. In fact, I feel like I don't have to turn down anybody, right? Because we had this, as my co-founder John says, we had our AWS moment, right? Amazon, built AWS for its own purposes, and then all of a sudden I said, gee, we could provide this service to other people. And so that was the big pivot you discussed, from an internal software project to something that, when we rewrote the software and made it a many-to-many relationship and opened this network, which grows organically daily with no marketing dollars spent. And that on the other side, veteran entrepreneurs, whether they're in real estate, they have a fund, or they're a startup, or they have a franchise, whatever they're trying to raise capital for, any business that they're trying to raise capital for, can plug in and list and connect with those people whom they have a great level of affinity, right? A serious level of connectedness with, because the buy side, if you will, the investor side of this marketplace or platform are largely military veteran accredited investors. So these are millionaires and multimillionaires who are looking to invest in veteran businesses. Period.
Yeah, that's awesome. You use the new apartment building or the condo complex going up in the local community. One of the things you said, like, we put in this is something that your investors already invested in. You said, hey, we put in a new parking lot for this building. And we sent a bunch of pictures and videos of us building the parking lot and before and after pics. And all of a sudden your phone starts ringing that's just one example of what your system does. Why is it that sending investors pictures of a parking lot, your phone?
I will take my best guess, because it certainly wasn't, the plan.
I guess you really don't need to know why. You just know that it works.
Yeah, I guess so. Listen, I think people understand. I said earlier that private investments are rather opaque, and they lack transparency by their very nature. And so, and even a stock, right, is in your brokerage account is not really tangible. It's not real. And
yeah,
so if you go ahead, I'm sorry.
It's so distant, it's like investing is, it's not like you get to go, you show up at the company and walk around and meet people just because
That's right. Yeah. You don't get to, go and see the CEO of the company and shake hands with them, nor do you go and have, get to, go and visit the building you invested in, but you can actually. And so that was the idea, is like, how do we make investing real and tangible? And so we started with this brand concept of real, right, and investments you can visit, investments you can talk to. Well, a CEO can't necessarily talk to every investor, but they can communicate information in a way whether it is taking a picture of a parking lot that's just been restriped, or sharing good news about the community, about a big company moving in and how that'll benefit that real estate project, or a contract being won by a startup. Those are real tangible ways for an investor to start to understand that, hey, this is real, and they begin to understand the investment, right? And then once they understand it, and then they can begin to trust it. And so the platform is really helps an entrepreneur or anyone trying to raise capital communicate relevant information at scale in a securities compliant manner. And that was our goal from the very start. And as anybody knows that, hey, we get a ton of email. We don't read everything. I think we even joked about the emails you sent to me prior to this podcast, and that I read them because they were relevant to me, right?
Yeah.
And I wanted to play by the rules that you've set up. And so what we've designed are SaaS-based tools and patented technology to help an issuer, an entrepreneur raising capital, communicate relevant information, things that get opened up at scale in a securities compliant manner. And I think that then connecting them to this growing network of people with whom they have an affinity with, i.e. other military veteran investors, will make all the difference. And certainly we've seen, case after case after case of people raising money this way.
Yeah. And so how do you go about vetting those things or information or people or organizations that you're willing to put on the platform?
Yeah. So a good bit of that is proprietary, right? We're not a FINRA registered broker dealer. We're a software platform. So we're not making recommendations. So there are some things that we do upfront in terms of bad actor checks and their securities filing, and stuff has to be in good order. But I think that the key difference between what Localvest is set up, and this is new, I don't think we've talked about this part yet, is, and I'll mention two things around trust. We're really one phone call, maybe two, away from anybody on that platform, right? So as an investor or as an issuer, you could vet someone pretty easily. The other is that the majority of our deal flow, right, the majority of our issuers that list on the platform actually come from a third segment of the Localvest platform called investor groups. And these investor groups are, for veterans that like to do deals together, to hundreds of investors that, all went to a school, or all, went to the Air Force Academy, whatever, So there are these multitude of investor groups that invest together. And so what we've set up is this third piece of the platform. Our investor group technology allows this group of people who trust each other to evaluate private investments. And with that, they perform the diligence. And so when they perform the diligence and then they communicate that using the platform to their other members, and then people can make a decision to invest from there.
Okay, so I got a question. From your perspective, since you're in this game, what is it blatantly obvious to you what there's more of? Is there more money out there looking to go into something, or is there more opportunities out there that are trying to find investors?
Yeah, it's gonna sound crazy and probably frustrating for an entrepreneur perhaps listening who's having difficulty raising money, but there is an infinite amount of money out there looking for deals.
Okay, I was hoping you'd say that. And my point is, coming from an entrepreneurial perspective, knowing that if you're not getting the investment or the money that you need, or you're not raising the capital that you need, then there's really one of two problems. You're either not, you might just have a bad idea, but
possible.
There's a lot of really good ideas that are just not presented well. Your stuff's not in order.
That's right.
Your books are a disaster or whatever.
Right.
It happens all the time. or it's either you or the idea that's not right, or you don't have the network to find the money.
Yeah, it's those are the, those are the reasons. Like, you either just have a bad idea, and nobody's ever been honest enough with you to tell you your baby's ugly, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so instead of just getting this kind of worthless encouragement of keep going, I'm like, well, I wouldn't, because that's just not a good idea. But who am I to judge, right? Maybe hear that from 10 people that say, that's not a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
Or that your presentation is awful, or your whatever, the way you're presenting it is bad, or your books are not in order, whatever the reason is. Yeah, so it could be it's not an investable idea. That certainly can be the case. The terms could be bad. I've had lots of people, they know enough to be dangerous. They've, I don't know, watched, too many movies or whatever, and read a few books, and they think that they're gonna, pull one over on someone. I'm like, listen, your deal terms need to be, middle of the fairway. There are established norms. Just be on the fairway. Don't get creative, right? And I can tell you a million stories about that. And they don't, and you try to tell them, but it's like talking to a brick wall. They never come back, because they just want to figure out a different way. And then, of course, then there are people that have everything, most everything in order, but they just don't have the network. They just don't know how. I said earlier, I don't know if it was during the break or it was recorded, that capital raising is a profession. Syndication is a profession. So you may know real estate, or you may know your business, but sorry, it's more than just telling the story of your business and asking for money. It is a profession. There is a process to it, and that's what we hope to also give to clients of Localvest. It's more than just connecting to a network. It's having access to these SaaS tools, these codified methods of raising capital, and utilizing them. And if you do that, we've seen a lot of success. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, fairly new entrepreneurs, they either don't know how to run their company in a way that makes it look presentable to outsiders, or they're not, or they don't care. But when no matter how new of an entrepreneur you are, you if you're going to run your business right, you really need to run it in a way that it does look good to an outsider looking in. Even if right now you don't think you're ever going to sell, or you don't think you're ever going to go try to raise money, if you're going to sell your business, you need to have the same things in order that you do if you're ever going to raise money for your business. It's the same. You have
Absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. Yes.
Yeah. And a lot of people, they run their business just haphazardly, or the way they feel like it, with not ever even consciously thinking about, if somebody showed up and looked in on my business, what's it going to look like to an outsider? And if you can run it properly from day one, then all that stuff's all in order, and makes it a whole lot easier than going back years later and trying to fix everything.
Yeah, really, there's no excuse nowadays. There's so many
Oh, yeah.
resources available, right, Joe? I'm jealous, and to some extent, of all the resources that are available to transitioning, veterans and military veteran entrepreneurs, that, whether it's on YouTube or through master classes or some of these boot camps that
Yeah.
exist. I mean, these are great programs that not any one is going to teach you everything you need to know about being in business. I mean, there's a lot that comes with experience, and all the scars and bruises that come with the ups and downs of growing it, running a business. But and then there's other networking groups where you can just have these peer-to-peer relationships. There's, with technology, we're on Zoom right now. There is all sorts of other technologies that exist, and platforms that exist out there to gain knowledge and to get smarter faster, that there's really no excuse if you're not immersing yourself in that environment, because you need to get smart. You need to get smart fast.
Yeah. And The other thing I'd like to stress is if you don't want to be a bookkeeper, or you're not an accountant or a tax expert or whatever, that's fine. You don't have, you really shouldn't go do that stuff unless you're
Yes.
very interested in it. You just need to make sure there is somebody that's doing it for you. You just can't let it go by the wayside because you don't like spending your time doing that.
Joe,
Um,
that's perfectly, true and absolutely true. I'm a big believer in that you have to know yourself. You have to know what your genius is, right? What are you better at than anybody else on the planet?
mhm.
And then and that's I visualize that as a number of concentric circles or rings. And so at the center is what you're great at, and you should never outsource your unique ability. And then everything else that you're very good or average or poor or just absolutely lousy at, all those things, somebody else is genius at those things. And so just find those people and that are trustworthy to perform those functions, and then you grow from there. But focus on your unique ability, outsource or hire somebody who's great at the things that you're not.
Absolutely. Well, Bill, unfortunately, we're getting close to the end of our time.
Yeah.
How do we find Localvest?
Yeah, please look us up on the web, localvest.com, and you can find me on LinkedIn, William Militello, Bill Militello. You should see me there. Please reach out. Love to connect with you, everybody on LinkedIn. And if you go to the Localvest website, please don't hesitate to join as an investor. It's absolutely free. You can create an investor group and have access to a lot of free tools. And of course, if you're an issuer or a veteran looking to raise money and you want a demo of the Localvest platform and its tools and what it could do for you, there's a little chat box on the website for Localvest. Just enter your name and somebody will get back to you, and we'll be speaking soon.
Yeah, sounds awesome. And also, Bill, if you're talking to somebody who's in the military, just getting out, looking to get in entrepreneurship, what kind of advice comes to mind?
What common advice comes to mind? I love it at the highest level. It's the toughest job, but you'll never really regret it with enough years of hindsight. But it's worth getting in somebody's hip pocket and having sort of an apprenticeship, even if it's for a year or two or three.
Mhm.
Don't get too comfortable, but learn. And there's somebody else. I've done it for others. People have done it for me. I've learned from people, and so I would look to do that. I would try to get in another veteran's hip pocket and learn from them for a couple of years, and then go out on your own and build your dream.
Awesome. Well, hey, Bill, really appreciate you sharing your story. Fascinating, interesting stuff, and looking forward to the future success of Localvest. I'll definitely be
Thank you.
checking it out myself. So, all right.
Thanks, Joe. This is great. I really appreciate it. And thanks again.
You bet. All right. These two Marines are Oscar Mike.